What's Your Poison?
Hey guys, welcome back to What's Your Poison? This is Moxie, and this is part 3, the final part of Vino Virginity. So I'll be playing the last part of my interview with Mandy, the 24-year-old virgin. But we're going to start off with some listener-submitted virginity stories. So I'm going to start with, this one is a 24-year-old female, and I'm going to start with a relatively good story because some of them aren't so great. I'm going to read the first couple because they wanted to remain anonymous. And then I do have 3 people that sent me their voice recordings. So we're going to play those just as is so you can hear them straight from the mouth of the people that experienced it. I'll also be including these on the website, poisonshow.com. And a couple people have decided to let me use their full identity, including their picture. So that's interesting if you want to put a face to a name. So let's go ahead and start. This is a 24-year-old female. I was a little older than I think most people are when they lose their virginity. When I ask a lot of people when they lost theirs, they say 16 or 17, but I hear a lot of people, especially guys, say they lost it at like 14 or something. I was 20. I was always a good girl growing up. I went to church every Sunday. I followed the rules. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I said, I'm going to wait till I got a ring on it. Yeah, that didn't happen. I started going out during my sophomore year of college. I started drinking. I started getting into the party scene, and I really liked it. It was the end of October because it was at a Halloween party. We went with friends, and I was drinking. I was standing outside on the phone when this guy passed me and said, "You want to dance later?" I was not even paying attention and said, "Sure." He stopped and said, "Wait, really?" He started talking to me, and I got really excited. We went back down and started dancing. I was there with my girlfriend who's gorgeous, like drop-dead gorgeous. Guys will fall all over themselves to introduce themselves to her. And this guy was dancing with me. It made me feel really good about myself. He took me to his car and made out with me and asked me to be his girlfriend that night. I was like, sure, okay, yeah, why not? He turned out to be this 30-year-old Mexican guy who owned his own construction business. It felt right to me. I thought he was mature and knew what he was doing with his life. I considered myself to be a mature 20-year-old. The next day, he took me out on a date. He picked me up at my house, he brought me flowers, and came in to shake hands with my father. He was a total gentleman. He took me to a Mexican restaurant. He only ever took me to Mexican buffet places. I hate Mexican food, so that should have been clue number 1. He was super Mexican. I didn't like the first entree, so he called over the waiter and ordered me another that he thought I would like better. He was super nice about it. After we ate, he asked if I wanted to go for a ride because he didn't want the date to end yet. I agreed, and he started driving me back to his place, which was an hour and a half away from where I lived. I had gotten all dressed up, and he was complimenting me left and right. It was a nice ride through beautiful countryside, and we were talking the whole time. He had his own place, which was nice. I feel like when a lot of people lose their virginity, it's in a car or their parents' house or some weird place. But he had his own spot. He was very smooth and gentle, and he didn't rush anything. He was very seductive and got me in the mood. It wasn't terrible. It was actually pretty nice. I read a bunch of romance novels when I was younger, and they always talked about the virgins. Oh, the pain! But then it slowly eased into this rapturous desire. It hurt a little, but it did somewhat ease into rapturous desire. The cliches were right. We dated a couple months, but he actually turned out to be a total jerk. At least the first time was nice. So I started you off on kind of a nice one. Not everyone's first time goes like that. I just based on the stories I've gotten, gonna go with it's a pretty rare occurrence. But the next one's real short, and it's I wanted to remain anonymous, but he's a 31-year-old male. He said, "It was not interesting or sexy. It was lame. It was no shit, Craigslist. Very clinical. Went, banged, left. Lied and said I wasn't a virgin. I was 20. I fucked around with girls when I was 18, but one dumped me. I got crazy upset and gave up for a bit. I was a super awkward late bloomer." I hadn't heard of a virginity loss for hire until that, so that was pretty fun. This next one, it's Ben. He's a 30-year-old male, and he didn't care if I said his name, so his face will also be on the website. He said he wanted to spread the gospel of Ben. He's a dork, but he's really hot. All right, so he said, "My first time was really, really bad. I was 20 or 21. Basically, I had been talking to a friend for a while who knew I was a virgin. She and I almost hooked up after her boyfriend dumped her, and then I moved away and we didn't see each other for a couple of years. We started hanging out again and she would sleep over, or I would sleep over at her place. She was a user of pills, weed, alcohol, and people. One night we were laying in bed. I tried to initiate and she was too tired, so I jerked off and went somewhat to sleep. Then while cuddling, I got frisky and she decided she wanted to fuck. She was extremely experienced compared to me at this point and way more into anal than I was ready for. So I put on a condom and couldn't get fully hard and proceeded to throw my hot dog down a hallway, both of us being half asleep. She stopped me and we went to sleep. And that was it. Pretty shitty. Then she fucked my friend a few days later. Sorry if I'm scaring you, Mandy. Mandy hasn't heard these stories yet. Might keep her somewhat pure a little longer. Not trying to scare ya. All right, this is the last listener submission I'm going to read, and this is an anonymous 30-year-old female. I actually went to high school with her, and she emailed it in and said, when I was 15, I started dating, quote-unquote, Mr. Popular, and she said I would definitely know him. So, of course, I had to get details, but no, you get none of the details. She said, I was completely innocent. I had never messed around with a guy before. He was definitely experienced and had dated lots of older girls. I believe it was Super Bowl Sunday, 2005. I had lied to my mom and told her I was spending the night at a friend's house, but I spent the night with him instead. We had been dating for about 3 weeks at that point and had been close to doing it, but hadn't yet because I was scared. He had one of those weird loft beds that had a desk attached underneath it. We ended up under the desk messing around, and then he asked if I was ready. I said I wasn't sure if I was. Then he told me he loved me and wanted to more than anything. Me being a dumbass 15-year-old, I was thinking, okay, he loves me, let him in. I remember him putting the condom on. It was a Durex brand textured condom. I laid on my back and he got on top of me. He started to put it in and I remembered regretting it instantly because it hurt like hell. I was thinking, why in the hell do people enjoy this shit? The sex lasted all of 3 minutes, if even that. After the first time, it was on from there. She ended up actually having a kid with him, and he hasn't seen his kid in years. So not exactly a fairy tale. That's a tragedy. I'm not going to read these, but I'll just give you the gist. I asked a couple other people when they lost theirs, and one of the guys I know said that he was 13, and he lost it with his 19-year-old family friend. So I told him that was a good story, but that I was sorry he technically got raped, and all he said was he enjoyed every minute of it. So, teach their own, I guess. She should have known better. Then he asked his friend, who was over at the time, a female. He's in his 30s, and I assume she is as well. But she was 11 and lost it to a 15-year-old boy. That's by far the youngest I've ever heard. And that's terrifying. And, I mean, she wanted to. It was consensual. And, again, a family friend. So, you never know, I guess. But, yikes, 11 is young. Now I'm going to play you some submissions that I got, that people actually voice recorded and sent in. So, one of them still wants to remain anonymous, but I mentioned him on either the last part or part one. It's Zoidberg. He sounds Novocaine as hell. I'll play his first. He sounds like he just got back from the dentist. I know him well enough that I was like, were you laying down when you recorded this? He goes, maybe. You can tell? Yes, we can tell. It sounds like you're laying on your face. So, he doesn't always talk like that. Without further ado, here's Zoidberg's story.
I was on my first official date. Not really sure how long in between meeting her it was, but regardless, we went with her friend Ruthers to some dude's house that I have never met before and never met after. And we were all hanging out in their loft. There were probably 5 or 6 guys there when we got there. They were all playing Mario Kart, which I was hella jealous of because no one let me play, and I would have absolutely destroyed them, but that's not the point. Everyone got high as fuck, and this was only maybe my second or third time ever smoking, so I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. So we were there for a while, eventually left, went back to the dorms, and I seem to remember it was pretty late. I have no idea where her roommates were, but we ended up moving the futon out from the wall, then getting freaky behind the futon directly on the floor because her roommate was there, so her bedroom wasn't an option, and I had a roommate, so that wasn't an option. Plus the freshman beds were just borderline prison quality. And I seem to remember being there for all of like 2 or 3 minutes, and I was like, oh yeah, my bad, I'm done. We can try to do this again later.
All right, that was Zoidberg's story. Nothing like fucking on the floor behind a futon in a dorm room. That's classy as hell. At least he enjoyed himself. Anyway, so the next story I'm going to share is my best friend Elle's. She'll probably make some appearances on this podcast. She's a hoot and a half, but she was totally cool being identified, and she's actually the only female that submitted a story that was okay being identified. So that's pretty nifty, but she's just like me, otherwise we wouldn't get along. She's brash and loud and wonderful. So here is Elle's story.
Hey guys, my name's Elle. I'm 32, engaged, very kink friendly, very sex positive. This is my virginity loss story. So I lost my virginity to the first boy that I ever kissed. He was 15, I was 17. It was very unplanned. We literally had oral sex the week before in the back of his car. Super classy. And that night, I ended up swallowing his cum and threw up about 45 minutes later. So that was just a great first sexual experience in and of itself right there. So the day that we had sex, he picks me up, we get to his room, he just starts getting undressed, and me being super awkward, as I am all the time, I figured, this is going to happen, so I might as well just get naked, because he picked me up and brought me here, so I can't really just leave. And yeah, I think I would have just waited longer to have sex. We 69 for what felt like hours, but was probably like 15 minutes. And just kind of looking at his penis, there was nothing wrong with it, but I swear in that moment, I knew that I was probably a lesbian, which I pretty much am now, so that's a thing. I put a condom on him, hopped on top, rode like a rodeo superstar in the cowgirl position. It was too intense for him though, so he grabbed my hips and kind of like helped me get on my hands and knees. And we did doggy style for about 2 minutes until he pulled out super fast. And then I said the worst 3 words a man could hear. Is that it? Yep. I asked that bitch if he was done, because surely he was just taking a breather, right? There's got to be more. There wasn't any more. It was over. And we broke up about 3 weeks later, and we'd only had sex once. He called me on the phone maybe a few hours after he dropped me off to tell me that the condom broke, and that if I got pregnant, he was going to stay with me and help me raise our baby together. Super sweet of him, right? He didn't get me pregnant, thankfully, and because of that entire exchange, I didn't have sex for an entire year afterwards.
Alrighty, there's that. I don't even know what to say about that. That's just tragic. And you 69'd your first time. That's insane. I can't even, I don't like doing that now. Brave woman. Alrighty, so the last one I'm going to play for you is a little longer, but it's my friend Matt, and we actually met at a dating site, but we're still friends, and the story is kind of interesting. He talks about his first couple almost blowjobs, and then the first time he lost his virginity. So yeah, here is Matt's story.